Chazal tell us that Shloshim Yom Kodem HaChag, 30 days before Yontif, and specifically by Pesach, and there's a discussion if it applies the other Yom Tovim, but 30 days before you start discussing Inyani Diyoma. So we're already well into Chodesh Elul, so we'll discuss some Inyani Rosh HaShana for the next couple of weeks. And here we have, in this year especially, when we have Rosh HaShana Shachol b'Shabbos, a lot other issues come up as well. So the Mishnah begins at the beginning of the fourth parak of Rosh HaShana, when it talks about Rosh HaShana Shachol b'Shabbos. Rosh HaShana falls out on Shabbos. So we know there's a mitzvah of shofar. So what happens when Shabbos and shofar are in conflict? Is there a conflict? So the Mishnah says, B'mikdash hayu token. In the Beis HaMikdash, they used to blow the shofar afilu b'Shabbos. Even on Shabbos, it's a clear-cut Mishnah. B'mikdash token. And you have a famous dispute, Machlokas Rashi and the Rambam, exactly what does Mikdash mean. Rashi learns the simple pshat. Mikdash means Mikdash, the Beis HaMikdash. And the Rambam learns Mikdash as not just Mikdash, but Yerushalayim, the old city of Yerushalayim, the walled city, that also has a din of Mikdash. And it's not just for this halach, it's a general machlokas for other things as well. So we'll just work with the simple pshat for now, with Rashi, that it means Mikdash, but we'll see, based on this Rambam, there's going to be some halach l'maisa as well. So the Mishnah says, "B'mikdash hayu token, aval lo b'medina." But anywhere outside the Mikdash, there is no mitzvah to blow shofar. So again, the Mikdash yes, Medina no. So the Gemara asks, "Minahani mili." How do you know this? How do you know there is no mitzvah of blowing shofar on Shabbos in the Medina? So the Gemara goes on to quote two different psukim, a pasuk from Parashas Pinchas, Yom Trua, and a pasuk in Parashas Emor of Zichron Trua. The Torah describes in two different ways the mitzvah of Rosh Hashanah, of shofar. In Pinchas it's referred to as the day of Yom Trua, and in Parashas Emor it's described as Zichron Trua. So the Gemara initially wants to say, well, we have a very simple answer. What do we need the two psukim for? So Yom Lo Kasha, it's no difficulty. Yom Trua is referring to when Rosh Hashanah falls out during the week. It's a Yom Trua, it's a day of blowing of the shofar. And Zichron Trua, that's when Rosh Hashanah falls out on Shabbos. We don't actually blow the shofar, we just remember the shofar. So therefore that's what the Gemara initially wants to state, to explain how we know that in the Medina on Shabbos we don't blow shofar, based on Zichron Trua. So comes along the Gemara and says, what are you talking about? If this is true, if you're telling me this is imid deraisa, if this is a biblical distinction you're making, that you're telling me on Shabbos there is no mitzvah of blowing shofar in the Medina, if it's a din deraisa, then the Mikdash, heichi takin, and how did they blow shofar in the Beis HaMikdash? If you're telling me there's no mitzvah of shofar at all, the mitzvah of shofar does not exist on this coming September 19th. So if you're telling me there is no mitzvah shofar, so why are they blowing shofar in the Beis HaMikdash for? Therefore, we can't make this distinction. Well, we're rejecting the Havamina, and therefore the Gemara concludes, you're right, really min ha-Torah, there is no difference. Yom Trua and Zichron Trua relate both to Rosh Hashanah during the week and Rosh Hashanah to Shabbos. So, if that's the case, then if there's a mitzvah in Torah blowing shofar this Shabbos, how come we're not going to be blowing shofar in Toronto? So the Gemara tells us this famous Gzeira D'Rabba, that the Gemara tells us Hakol Chayavim B'tchiyah Shofar, we're all obligated in the mitzvah of shofar. Ve'ein Hakol B'kiyin, however, we're not all well versed, and maybe even if we aren't all well versed in know how to blow shofar ourselves, and therefore the concern is Shema Yelach Eitzel Baki. You might go, you're a big Kanaka, you'll start you wake up just ready to blow your shofar, nothing's coming out, you can't get, then you're going to go to a bucky to start Tishu, and you'll forget it Shabbos, and you'll carry the shofar, v'yelach dalet amas b'rshus harabim. And hu adin, and that's the same halacha we're going to have by Sukkah this year as well. There is not going to be a biblical mitzvah of dalet minim this year. U'lakachta mechem b'yom harishon. It's only the first day is biblical, and since the first day is going to be Shabbos, Gzeira D'Rabba, Behu Adin, we don't really have it, maybe in the old city, Megillah on Shabbos. The way our calendar is set up, we can't have, Tezvav can fall out on Shabbos, but Yudalid can. But the Gemara says, Behu Adin, if Purim falls out on Shabbos, also no Megillah on Shabbos, because you'll Yelach Eitel Baki B'Yom. So the Gemara has Gzeira D'Rabba by Megillah, by Lulav, and by Shofar. So the Gemara seems to reject the Havamina, and the Gemara seems to conclude that Min HaTorah, there is no distinction between Yom Teruah and Zichron Teruah in terms of they equally apply to Rosh HaShana during the week and Rosh HaShana on Shabbos. So how come if Min HaTorah we should be blowing Shofar on Shabbos? How come we're not? So that's a Gzeira D'Rabba. Rav Rabbah made a decree that we're afraid it's going to be Gorem Chilul Shabbos, and therefore to avoid Chilul Shabbos, they said no shofar today. So that's the simple reading of the Gemara, yeah?
What's the key in the mikdash? If any individual, the key is on the Gabbat to hear shofar. So you have a person living that, in Yerushalayim, you understand, because it's in Yerushalayim, any person living in Yerushalayim has the feel of hearing the shofar. So how do you find the mitzvah, according to Rashi, to have hear shofar, that any individual who wants to hear shofar can go up to the Har Bayis and blow shofar there, and then you have the same question of carrying. And you say there's no shus in the mikdash. It's an interesting.
Yeah, so actually we'll see. We're going to have a similar, but that's a good question in terms of it's obviously not a kovas gavra. In terms of we'll see. The dita should am I obligating him? If I'm not, should I try to make it there? Because we're going to have this shaila halach l'mais. I'll get to that in a couple of minutes.
You should have a base.
But not do right. Assuming the rif sheet, I'll get to in a minute that.
It seemed that I would think that anyone in Yerushalayim, right? If you're going shofar in the mikdash, you have a chiyuv to go to the mikdash and shofar then, because you have no shofar.
Right, but soon I guess
Didn't they say in Gemara later it was Sanhedrin?
Yeah,
they moved to Yavne, the whole machloket, so it seems to be tied in with the Sanhedrin.
Yeah, that's
really the mikdash.
That's we'll see. That's the base. That's the rif sheet. No, but either way, right? No, but pashta. So, but the way it's if you're in the mikdash, you have a chiyuv to blow shofar. That's the general question. Then, if I can make it to the mikdash, or should I put myself in a situation where I could do? And but pashta said you wouldn't be chayiv. You wouldn't have a chiyuv of shofar unless you're in the mikdash. However. But if you're not in the mikdash, that gets into a general question: am I obligated to put myself in a situation where I could do, like we discussed, like by Moshe Rabbeinu, he's mitzvah, he couldn't enter Eretz Yisrael. What do you mean? That he couldn't fulfill Trumas and Maitis, but he didn't have an obligation. So that could depend on that question.
But it's a little bit different.
Right. Also, the question maybe on being, if you're derech recholka by Karban Pesach, right. In terms of.
But here's not derech recholka because you're right.
No, right. I'm saying, but those, right, there could be similar questions to that. But we'll see. We're going to discuss that question in a couple of minutes.
And but the question is.
Yeah, the other way. Then we'll.
It's just not a question of ancient mikdash.
Right? It is. So it is.
Or is it an assumption that in the base of mikdash you're not going to make a mistake?
Well, that's all. That's the question.
The turn here is interesting. Is that the chiyuv on the person in the base, that you can go up to the mikdash to your shofar, you're going to have the same problem with some of your shalim. When the person is, it's not the blowing that's the problem. It's the fact that you're concerned about it. It's the guy.
Right. So but the assumption may be that in the base of mikdash you're not going to make such. I'm sure it's organized.
You're not going to make them.
Not just everybody walks in and blows shofar when they want in the base of mikdash. I'm sure they have.
It is. That's a Rashi, right? The question is, how come? The question is, why is it then? Why don't we make, if we make a Gzeira D'Rabba in the Medina, why don't we make a Gzeira D'Rabba in the Mikdash? the Mefarish Shemayim. Rashi writes, because ain't shvus b'mikdash. We don't make, right, Kohanim's reason him, and we're not...
That's understand for the Kohanim.
Right, then that's where your question comes in.
Yeah.
Maybe are the Kohanim going to take care of the other people?
Yeah,
right, well,
it says, well,
right, that's,
I have a shofar here, we go up to the Mikdash, I can blow there.
Right, but that's why, right, that's how Rashi explains why in the Beis HaMikdash itself, Kohanim's reason him and ain't shvus b'mikdash. But we'll see, we'll come back to it.
That's because Kohanim's reason, but here you're talking about any...
Right, any person could come, right, then assuming where they were blowing and if it was...
Right.
It
seems to be much more formal type of blow.
Right.
It seems to be a different type of blow, which ties into the
Right, no, that's what we'll see, that's what, that's how we'll see. Some will explain it has to do with being in a base, and being in front of a base, then, that will be the issue. It was, what's the pshat and what's the issue of the mikdash, right? So that's the simple reading of the Bavli. I'll come back to a Shibari Leket in a minute. First, let me just tell you the Yerushalmi. The Yerushalmi basically retains the Havamina of the Bavli. The Yerushalmi likes what the Bavli said originally. The Yom Trua refers to Rosh Hashanah during the week. The Zichron Trua is referring to Rosh Hashanah on Shabbos. So you ask, so what about the Bavli's question? How can you make a distinction between the Mikdash and the Medina? So the Yerushalmi explains, and the Rav also explained to Yerushalmi that it's a special limud the Yerushalmi has, that it's two different parashas. Yom Trua, it has to do with avodas hakarbanos in the Mikdash. Shabbos and Zichron Emor is not only limited to the Mikdash, but all those halachas also apply to the Medina. So where the Rabbi explained to Yerushalmi, and others explain it as well, that the Yerushalmi has special limud. Yom Trua is right next to the karbanos. So the special limud, the makam karbanos, it's always a Yom Trua. With the special, there is a custom of a limud. The Yerushalmi learns out that the Beis HaMikdash is different. And I can never really Zichron Trua. So he says biblically there's a difference. According to the Bavli, there's no difference between Mikdash and Medina, except one place we do Ein Gzeira D'Rabba, and one place we say Ein Shvus B'Mikdash. Yerushalmi saying it's a fundamental difference. There is no mitzvah in the Medina, but there's a biblical mitzvah of blowing shofar in the Beis HaMikdash. So that's a fundamental machlokes Bavli and Yerushalmi. It's an interesting Shibui Halek and some other, the minority view in the Rishonim, but some bring down a very interesting pshat in the Gemara just said. The simple reading is, like I said, is basically they seem to be rejecting the Yom Trua and Zichron Trua, and everyone agrees Minat Torah there's a mitzvah. It's only the rabbi said no. Comes along the Shibui Haleket and others and says, no, that's not the pshat in the Gemara. They have to reread into it. It's a tremendous chiddush, but interesting anyway. We don't accept the Lamaisa, but interesting. So they say that the Gemara is the ve-chatima. The Gemara, when it's giving the Gzeira D'Rabba, it's basically kind of like being Darshina and Taima D'Kra. In other words, the Gemara is explaining why really we accepted this biblical distinction between Yom Trua and Zichron Trua. The Gemara is not bringing Gzeira D'Rabba to say we reject the whole premise and everything. No, the premise is true. The Raisa, there is a difference. What the Gemara is explaining is on the Torah level why there's a mitzvah on the Torah to blow shofar in the Mikdash and to blow shofar in the Medina. We say Gzeira D'Rabba in the Medina and not in the Mikdash. He says that's a biblical gather, like Rav Yosef Engel writes in his Sefer many places. We have the concept, we normally assume the Chachamim make a Gzeira. There's a Din D'Rabbanan, you make a Gzeira D'Rabbanan protecting the Din D'Oraisa. Rav Yosef Engel goes into many examples, it's not just one or two. He has a list of like 10, 12 of them. But Rishiba Haleket and Rav Yosef Engel, over there in the Gilyon Hashas, he refers you to this, over there in the Gemara in Rosh HaShana. He points out, he wants to say it's Minat Torah, the Torah we're concerned. That we're concerned about Chilul Shabbos, so the Torah said no shofar it wasn't the rabbis who came over and said Gzeira the Rabbah. It was a bit like we have like they write by Bittul, like we have by Bedikas Chametz and Bittul. What do we have? If you assume we have the Bediko or the Bittul in order Shema lo Yovel lo Ochlo, so that's an example the Ran writes of a biblical siag. That it's a Minat Torah that we're only concerned about eating chametz. But we tell you not to own chametz, because we don't want you to come to eat it. Or as some learn, that's the issue of basa v'cholov. We know there's an issue of achila, and there's an issue of bishul. Why are we so makbid on the bishul? The way some learn is, bishul is only, really you don't care so much about the bishul. The ikar is the achila, but we said don't do Minat Torah. The Torah said don't cook basa v'cholov. We're afraid. So the many examples he gives where we find a biblical. So therefore, that's how the Shibui Halal learns the Gemara. That really they agree that everything is still the right. So really Minat Torah you have to blow even in the Medina. It wasn't the rabbis who told you not to blow shofar. It's the Torah. So with that, you have a lot less questions than we're going to have. But that's an interesting shot from a few Rishonim, but that's not the Pshuto, and that's not the accepted psak.
So in the rest of Yerushalmi, when it talks about Zera D'Rabba, does it mention it being?
The Yerushalmi, there is no Zera D'Rabba for Yerushalmi. Goes with the Yerushalmi says there is no mitzvah.
I'm saying in that Gemara, but throughout the rest of Yerushalmi, does it ever mention Zera D'Rabba being on shofar?
That'd be right. So if the Yerushalmi is consistent, then you're right. It shouldn't be. Maybe it's not. That might. I don't know. I haven't gone through all Yerushalmi, but right, based on what we're saying, there shouldn't be any concept. There could be a concept, but definitely not by here. He's not denying. He's just saying here, this would not fall under the concept because unless he's learning, like, you could say the Shabbat. If you learn the Shabbat, you could say the Yerushalmi is not really arguing on. It's a much less of a machlokas. But either way, we assume halacha there's a fundamental dispute between Yerushalmi and Bavli on in the Medina. Is there a mitzvah? Biblically speaking, in our Torah, is there a mitzvah to blow shofar this coming Rosh HaShana called b'Shabbos? According to the Bavli, yes. According to everyone, we don't do it. The question is, why not? According to the Bavli, we should. Zera the Rabbah tells us we can't. The Rabbi told us not to. And according to Yerushalmi, there's nothing to talk about. There's no mitzvah. The concept of shofar does not exist. Zichron Trua tells me there is no mitzvah of shofar on Rosh HaShana Shachol b'Shabbos. Any questions, someone? So that's
such a fundamental difference.
What?
I mean, the argument's too fundamental. It's not a matter.
No.
Different. It's not a D'Rabbanan we argue. We argue. Is it a mitzvah to blow shofar? Right. Is it a mitzvah to blow shofar on Shabbos? Period. How could they not have known that? It is or it isn't. Like, what does it mean? It's machlok.
No, right. So I'm saying if you go with the Shubu Halekha already, that explain. That
it's too fundamental of an issue to have.
Well, they knew you didn't do it.
That's
why you didn't do it.
No, but you have like 130 years ago. I forget the name of this rabbi. To reinstitute blowing shofar on Shabbos in Yerushalayim.
Yeah, I know. But
I don't get this. The Gemara's it's a mitzvah or not.
No, but I'm saying right in terms of it depends how right. Right. So everyone agrees there's a mitzvah of shofar on Rosh Hashanah. The Rebbe says that we'll see. And that says explicitly on Shabbos. There's a mitzvah of shofar on Rosh Hashanah. The Mishnah tells us the mikdash. Everyone's in agreement. It seems to be very, as you said, it's a very broad, very big machlokas. Whether practically speaking, it doesn't come out to because we're not going to blow shofar, but we'll see there are many nafkaminas. So we'll get to a couple now.
What you just said was Shmuel left his baby trying to explain to Yerushalmi. It's an interesting question about the rule of Nesher.
I'm saying he was explaining the Bavli, but I'm saying right for it seems to fit in
about the rule of Nesher, because if we try to make Shmuel like in concert with Yerushalmi and make the Bavli in concert with Yerushalmi, there's a problem with the rule of Nesher. Because the Yerushalmi seems to be talking specifically about.
No, right. That'd be the question. What would the Yerushalmi say about lulav on Shabbos?
But that we know they took lulav on Shabbos, but they didn't in the Medina. There's no machloket.
Right. There's no Right, in the Medina,
There's no machlokes.
right. Everyone knows, right, on Shabbos you didn't, right. So
No,
Shabbos
yeah,
They did on Shabbos.
no, outside of
in the
Yerushalayim.
Medina, yeah.
Yeah, but that's question.
But that's also by shofar. Shofar they did.
Yeah.
The shofar.
But there you have machlokes whether it's a mitzvah on Shabbos. Nobody's arguing whether lulav on the first day is a mitzvah.
No, that's the question. It's clear the Bavli would say it's a Gzeira D'Rabba. The question is we don't know. The question is what would the Yushalmi have the same distinction by shofar as lulav? But no, maybe it's just that's the question. Or would they say the same thing they say by that's what we have to check the Yushalmi.
Especially since the Yerushalmi is within 200 years of the Furban. So especially, it's a good question. I mean, it's not like it was so long afterwards that they could.
Yeah.
Right, so obviously with the Yushalmi, you avoid the major question is obviously the question is number one is, so if according to the Kasha on the Bavli is, at least according to the simple reading of the Bavli, so how could they go ahead if Minat Torah is a mitzvah to blow shofar on Shabbos in the Medina, how could the rabbis come along and tell you not to blow shofar? So where do they get the source from? So that's what we read last week in Parashat Shoftim. And a couple of years ago we gave a whole series on mitzvahs d'Rabbanan. But the Torah tells us that what do you do when there's a conflict? The Torah tells you to blow shofar or any other mitzvah, and the Chachamim say no. So the only reason we listen to the Chachamim because the Torah told us we have to listen to the rabbis. In fact, Rabbi Chanan Wasserman has the pshat. Number one is in general, that's the famous Rashi quotes the Sifri, Al Yamin, small Yamin, that Rashi quotes the famous Sifri that if when the Chachamim tell you left is right is left, you have to follow them. Kal v'chomer, when they tell you right is right and left is left. So many people mislearn Rashi and they think Rashi's telling us that you follow the Chacham even when they're wrong. So that's what I think Rav Shechta always liked saying over. I think it was it Herman Wilk who wrote the K Muni? Whoever wrote the K Muni, so he came to YU. I think it was him, and I guess he was giving the story is basically with the captain in terms of who the responsibility. So he basically said that he quoted this Rashi about that even if they tell you the wrong thing, you have to follow them. So the boys that knew the Ramban is what he's talking about. That's not the Ramban's Kash on Rashi. It can't be what he means because the first Mishnah in Krisa says we have halachas that if you do something, if it's a black and white mistake, either Beis Din brings a carbon, you have to have an atonement. So it's clear we do not follow the Chacham when they're wrong. What he's saying is if you don't know, basically they know more than you. You don't know that they're wrong. Your working assumption is you have to go. It's not like talk radio where everyone's voice is equal. You call and you tell them if you think the Yankees are going to win Boston or how you feel about. Everyone has that. But in halacha, it's not the way it works. You might, not everyone's entitled to an opinion. Everyone's entitled to an opinion, but they're not of equal value. And therefore, obviously, you go with the. If you think they're wrong, you're an Amaretz. What do you know? Don't worry what you think. Just listen to Chachamim, and you'll be better off. So Rabbi Chanan Wasserman, he says, you know what this is referring to? We know the famous Gemara in Yevamos, Yesh koach biyad chachamim la'akor dvar Torah b'shei ve'altasa. In other words, there's a whole discussion. There's one opinion in the Gemara, even Makom v'aseh, but the Gemara, the way we pass in the Gemara says, the chacham have the power to uproot a mitzvah in our Torah b'shei ve'altasa, by merely telling you not to do something. In other words, as the example I like giving, if you're having a Mac attack and you feel you have to go to McDonald's, so assuming it's Basar B'Cholov there, so maybe the one in Israel, I don't know, but so then the Chacham can't tell you can't eat there because that's a kum v'aseh. However, not to blow shofar on Shabbos, merely not to perform a mitzvah of lulav, a shofar, they're telling you not to do something. That's the Rabbi Chanan is saying. That's what it means. When they tell you left is right and right is left, the Torah tells you blow shofar today, you shake lulav today, and the Chacham tell you not to. That's what it means. That's what the Rabbi Chanan says. That's what it's referring to. You listen to the Chacham when they tell you left is right and right is left. In other words, that v'yesh koach b'yach chachamim la'akor dvar Torah b'shei ve'al-tasa. And of course that's what the Rambam writes in Hilchos Mamrim. He just explains in general what's the concept of the chachamim uprooting a mitzvah in a Torah. Is the bottom, so he gives an example of the person's walking by, and I guess it looks like a doctor is operating on someone, and then, I guess he sees him, cutting off his leg or something. He says, "Oh, what a doctor, how brutal he is." And then if you get closer, you see the guy had gangrene, had an infectious disease. He's basically saving his life. It's true, he's going to walk around, maybe now you have artificial legs, but at that point, it's true you're going to walk around without a leg, but ultimately the big picture is you're ahead of the game. That's what the Rambam says. Chacham have a right, true. Which is a discussion. We'll see the Bali Kabbalah might feel differently. We'll get into probably in the next coming weeks. But some want to say it's even greater this year without the shofar, but we'll leave that out for a minute. But this year we're losing out. We're not going to have shofar on Shabbos. You're right, we are missing something. We're missing a limb. But in the big picture, to keep the surah of Shabbos, so Chachamim have the big picture, and they tell us what not to do. We are missing something here. So that's what the Rambam writes in Hilchos Mamrim. They can't just tell you not to do a mitzvah and that's it permanently, but they could tell you to do a horasha type of thing. And in fact, that's why the question they ask also as well is why we know. So the Gemara says Gzeira Derabah here. So yeah, we know when the day 8 falls out on Shabbos, a baby boy. Again, it's only day 8. A milah b'zmana is docha Shabbos. A milah she'ena b'zmana is not docha Shabbos. So milah on day 8, the halacha is, and according to Rabbi Lezer, even the Machshirei milah will be passed in just the milah itself. We do the milah on Shabbos. What happened to Rabbi fall asleep from milah? Why didn't he throw in milah? For the Gemara, we do sukkah, shofar. Why not say gzeira derabah by milah? That's the kasha all the Rishonim, the Achronim ask. So one of the rules the Taz gives, and it's a general klal, that besides, we know the Chachamim have limits to their power. So one is only v'shei ve'al-tasa, only passively telling you not to do something. They can't actively tell you to go against. And another one is that they can't go against something which is mafurish b'kra, something which is explicitly written in the pasuk, so the Chachamim can't tell you not to do it. So that's what the Taz writes over here, even though it isn't really explicit, but I guess with Yud Gimel Midos, we'll have to consider it explicit. But his klal is that, so therefore he says, it says biyom, and we make a drasha feel, but it doesn't actually say it in the Chumash, but he considers it like it is mafurish b'kra, so we'll go with the Taz on this one. So he says, it says biyom afil b'Shabbos, that's mafurish b'kra. The Chacham, that the Torah says we want you to do a bris on Shabbos, so the Chachamim can't come along and tell you no bris today. Basha'in came when it comes to Rosh HaShana, as I pointed out, if it would have said in the Torah, when Rosh Hashanah falls out on Shabbos, we blow shofar, we wouldn't be having this year tonight. But the fact is, it doesn't say, it only says on Rosh Hashanah, you have to blow shofar. It doesn't say explicitly shofar on Shabbos, and therefore, they can akor b'torah b'shei ve'al-tasa. But when it comes to milah, it's mafurish b'kra, so the Chachamim can't stop. And in fact, that's what the Bach and others along these lines with the Taz, they ask a follow-up question. We know there's a Gemara in Be'ez Shabbos talks about not to play musical instruments. Gzeru, you might come, Shem Yisak and Klishir, that you might come to violate a biblical malach of fixing. So tikkun kli, bona, whatever we were talking about. So the kasha is, so why didn't they? So the question number one is shofar considered a musical instrument? That's a machlokas rishonim. So if you say it's not, then the question doesn't start. But if you assume like those other rishonim who assume that shofar is a musical instrument, so happily blow shofar, shema, you might, what about tikkun kli? So therefore, the Taz, the Bach answer along these lines, because it happens every year that Rosh Hashanah falls out its Yontif. That's all the years I remember. It always falls out on a Yontif. In other words, you're always going to have every day of Rosh Hashanah is Yontif. So therefore, if you apply the klal Shema Yisak and Klishir, you're going to be oker the mitzvah of shofar lagamre. That means you'll never blow shofar, and that you can't do. The Torah says you have to blow shofar on Rosh Hashanah. So therefore, the chachamim can't make a gzeira Shema Yisak and Klishir on something which is mefurish b'Torah. In other words, something on Akira's davar min Torah when it's Akira lagamre. So that's what they along the lines they write. That's why there is no. That's why they can't make the gzeira Shema Yisak and Klishir.
What do you say about why is shofar not explicit?
Well, it doesn't, it's Yom Trua, it doesn't say in the pasuk of Yom, however, Yom HaShabbos, Tiku Shofar, or it doesn't say, it just says on Shofar, Zechron Trua, Yom Trua, but it doesn't talk about Shabbos per se. So therefore the Chachamim can uproot it, can push it off, but not if it's Mefurish Bakra.
Was the takana Rabbi made after they instituted 2 days of Rosh Hashanah?
You mean because then...
If you said Yom HaRechta, so you're going to blow it anyway.
Right. Correct. And that's
if they made
exactly,
2 days before, then it was easy for you to make the takana.
Exactly. It only makes sense if it's 2 days, because then else you would be Oker Lagamri. Yeah, so...
You're not Oker Lagamri every year.
Right, when
it's that year.
Right, so that's right. So then right, so that year, right. So then that year you wouldn't. So that year you wouldn't have shofar, but not being. But Shema Yisak and Klishir we're never going to have it. But that's right. But that specific year then, but Medina, so then you wouldn't have shofar.
I don't know why you have to look for a hetzer for Shema Yisak and Kli. It's a gzera to run. Obviously, they weren't going to make a gzera that you couldn't blow shofar. You don't have to.
No, at this point, no, we're not.
No, the question. Zero and you have to look for a head.
No, the question. No, the kasha is the terror. At this point, we're just explaining why they couldn't make. We're just explaining the reason why they couldn't make the gzera is because if they did that, it's the klal being oker davar min Torah. That was the point of it. That it's like the Taz
That's
says.
not why the gzera doesn't apply. The gzera doesn't apply because it was never made.
No, right. Obviously, no. What I'm saying is, but obviously you could. But like anything, why didn't they make the gzera? If you assume shofar is a musical instrument, then why not make the gzera? That's the question. But I'm saying, but it's more that the question's more a question knowing the answer before. It's for me. It's just solidifying the klal. It wasn't like everyone knew that we didn't make the gzera. It wasn't like they're asking why don't we? We know we don't, and then it's more the lumdis to get the klal. That's why it's not that they're taking that we're gonna knock off shofar.
Do you think the gzera the Rabbi that's not time-wise, because the idea is that the Mishnah already says it. So it's saying the gzera already existed.
The Mishnah says what?
The Mishnah already talks about you don't blow shofar on Shabbos
Yeah, but the Mishnah says, "But mikdash are you talking about lo Medina?" Right.
Right. Therefore, the idea is the gzera must have predated the Mishnah, right? In other words, it's not that the gzera came later. The gzera must have already.
Then the Mishnah goes like you showed me.
Well, the Mishnah is talking about. I mean, it seems to me that this was already a gzera from much earlier. Right? It wasn't Rabbi gzera. It's like
Rabbi's explaining. He's explaining what the Mishnah meant.
Yeah, but Rabbi's already.
He's not introducing a new gzera.
It's already in Babli.
No, but we don't know when was the 2 days of Rosh Hashanah instituted.
No,
was it from the time of the Mishnah or the Gemara?
It seems to have a Mishnah. I would seem to me that that's a Mishnah.
Right.
So
I'm saying maybe that.
Right.
That's maybe why the two went sort of went together.
Interesting, but in Yom HaRechta, I don't know if that made it as if the second day really isn't a rice. It's different. Yom HaRechta is like a Rabbanan concept still as Yom HaRechta.
Right, kind of like we treat it like the first day, but
right, but it's not exactly like that. I think the thing interesting that I thought is when you just sort of the others of the Mila, dawned on me that the gzera wouldn't work according to the other answer. If the gzera is because you're afraid you're going to carry it, but the other holds it's more to carry it. Therefore,
there's nothing to talk about.
That seems to imply that if you take the other answer versus coming back from that concept, that actually applies back to that you actually say really is that Mila inherently cannot be under that zero because it's not active.
But also they give other Rishonim told us this rights also because of the Yid Gimel Brisus and that Mila has courage. In other words, right. when you have courage, you don't want to push off. So no harm done. So you don't blow shofar this year, or you don't shake lulav. So at worst, we're talking about a bitul mitzvah aseh. But by Mila, we're talking about a chi of courage. So therefore, any time we're dealing with a courage, so therefore, that's what they said. There's no gzeira derabba when it comes to something which involves.
It's all basic.
Right, I know.
There's no curse at that time.
Right.
There's no curse in
Nishma is the 8th day. I mean,
there's no connection between the chiyuv to do on the 8th day and the curse.
No, but if you don't, no, but depends. Different Rishonim, the Machlokas Rambam Ravid. At what point are you chayav courage?
It's certainly not on the 9th day.
Yeah, but it's got one. The bottom line, if you do the Mila afterwards, you don't. But the question is it waiting? As long as you do the Mila before you die, you never will chayiv kares. Or I think it's the Ravid. It seems the chayiv kares is only made right. And then when you do it, you can undo it. I mean, that's a discussion in the Rishonim. Bottom line is once you do the Mila, you now have the kares, but it's a discussion.
But even at the 8th day, so the curse is not until.
No, right now. But the point is that even if you did, the point is you don't want to push off anything which involves the kares. We don't push off. So we're not going to make a rabbinic decree because we're concerned. Maybe if he doesn't do it today, he'll forget. Whatever the concern was. So it's not. It's the fact that the mitzvah sumo comes with the chiyuv kares if we don't do it. Not that he's never going to do it, right? So that's the whole discussion within the Bavli, the whole gzeira derabba. This quickly a couple of nafkaminas, and we'll continue next week. So my nafkamina between the Yerushalmi and the Bavli. So bottom line is we're not going to be blowing shofar this Shabbos in the Medina outside, and probably even in Eretz Yisrael, but we're not going to be blowing shofar. So what's the difference if I say like the Yerushalmi, Zichron True is the reason why I'm not blowing shofar? Or I say the reason is Gzeira Derabba. So one very practical difference, and this, as I like to say, this nafkamina can be anywhere between about 30 seconds to about 30 minutes. It depends how long your Musaf Rosh HaShana Shmona Esrei is, which is the longest Shmona Esrei of the year. So what happens this coming Shabbos, but we could reverse it on Sunday. We know, even though it's true the Bavli, which would fit in well with the Shibur Halakhet, that even though the Bavli rejects the distinction between Yom Shua and Zichron Shua, in our davening we accept it. In our davening we say insert the words Yom Shua when Rosh Hashanah falls out during the week, and it says insert the word Zichron, so that we still accept the chiluk to some extent. So the question is, what happens if one made a mistake? On Shabbos, instead of saying Zichron Shua, you say Yom Shua, or on Sunday you say Zichron Shua instead of Yom Shua, and you remember and you finish davening, you've already finished davening. Do I have to go back and repeat the davening? So, Nafkamina is a feeder Yerushalmi, you would have to. Basically, Zichron Shua, you're changing the Nusach HaTfilah, you're saying a prayer that has nothing to do with the day itself. Yom Shua is limited to during the week, Zichron Shua is limited to Shabbos. If you switch them around, perhaps you wouldn't be Yotzei.
Let's say you left out the bracha entirely. Why would you have to go back?
Which bracha?
You say the whole.
Right, which if you leave out one of the three brachas in the middle, what do you mean? But
the bracha itself is ma'akev. You've mentioned the Yom Tov, right? With any Yom Tov, right? You mentioned the Yom Tov. You leave out the bracha itself ma'akev.
You don't.
I thought as long as you mention the Yom Tov and then you're Yotze. That's why.
Is that in the bracha?
No,
say Yom Shua and Zichron Shua, it's not in the bracha.
It's not. I mean, that's part of the whole. It depends.
Right, but if you leave out a certain, that's true. If you leave out a certain sentence in any of the bracha, as long as
there's a long bracha with it.
Right, so
long bracha.
It says it's written in the bracha itself. I don't remember from the year.
When I get, yeah, okay.
In the bracha itself?
Yeah, we could check in the Magzor, but I'm saying, but
Even if it isn't the bracha, though, I don't think it's market, right? There's always the
no, but so some posts can bring it's easy to say because we don't pass them like the Yerushalmi, so there's no harm. But they say perhaps according to the Yerushalmi that to get into the whole changing Mapei of Chachamim and other issues, and they discuss perhaps at least we could discuss the question if you have to repeat davening, but. According to what we pass, like the Bavli, it's only a ve-chatima because we pass in Yom Shua and Zichron Shua apply equally to Shabbos and Sunday. So if we mix them up, it wouldn't make a difference. Allah will nice anyway. We pass and you don't go back. But you want the question within the Yerushalmi, you could clear the shaila on whether you'd have to go back or not. Getting into dinim of what's me'akev, what's not.
Doesn't the Nusach Hatzfilah then suggest that the Yerushalmi is right?
That's what I was pointing out. So I'm saying from right. I mean,
halacha l'maisa works better with the Bavli because there's no distinction, right, between Yom Zichron and
right.
It's in the davening.
It fits in better, but it's not a kasha on the Bavli. Like, but even we, let's say, me and you.
It's a very strong kasha because why would it be there? Why would you differentiate between Yom Zichron and Yom Teruah?
Right.
Why would you differentiate between
you should have.
You're saying because the answer is that if you make a mistake, it wouldn't make a difference and it's not marked. You don't have to go back, right?
No, I'm saying what they probably right. You're right. If me or you will make it, I agree. We should have the same nusach for both Shabbos and Sunday.
Right.
But I agree. But I'm saying, but once they're making a distinction between the two, Yom Shua makes sense, and Zichron is an allusion to the not blowing. But not that we accept Yerushalmi halacha, but the distinction. The reason, according to Shabbat like it fits in well, but according to the way the Pasha says. We're rejecting the Shabbos that is limited to Shabbos and Yontif. That could be, that maybe Zichron Shua has some more meaning on Shabbos. But they both apply to both days, but apparently there's something more about Zichron Shua from being based on Nusach HaTfilah.
Does anybody write that it seems like the Nusach would be
that's what I meant, that's the irony. They pointed even though the Bibli rejects the Yerushalmi in theory, I know, but they'll just say they don't reject the concept. They're rejecting why the mikdash heichet takinan, but it's not that they're rejecting the whole concept of Yom Shua and referring to during the week and Zichron Shua. Right. But so either way, you don't have to go back. Another question Rav Shlomo Kluger raises and others is a question more for Sephardim than Ashkenaz. Because we all know the luck is we blow shofar, and we also make a shechiyano. So the minhag of the Sephardim is, I guess among Sephardim you have different minhagim always, but according to some Sephardim, I believe the Mechaber, he says you only make a shechiyano the first day of Rosh HaShana, and there's no need to make a shechiyano the second day. The minhag Ashkenaz is no. We make a shechiyanu, whether it's the same issue as Megillah or not, we could discuss that they only make one shechiyanu on the Megillah and not, we make two. We could discuss if it's the same issue or not, but we make a shechiyanu twice. So therefore, according to us, this won't be a question. But he raises the question, let's say in a Sephardi shul, whatever the person, he forgot it was Shabbos, he didn't know that there's a difference between Mikdash and Medina. Whatever he was thinking or wasn't thinking, the bottom line is he went ahead and he made the brachas. We made the shechiyanu. Actually, he started blowing some tekiyas. So as we'll see, so I'll get to that question more later. But the question is, and afterwards they remember, we shouldn't have done it with Shabbos. So comes the next day in shul. Do they make another shechiyanu or not? If you're asking, it doesn't make a difference. You're going to make a shechiyanu anyway. But according to the Sephardim, that he says depends on this issue. According to the Yerushalmi, that it's a zichron shua. There is no mitzvah of shofar. No mitzvah exists. It's like blowing shofar today. It's not going to help me. It's nothing to do. There is no mitzvah today. So according to the Yerushalmi, it'd be a no-brainer. You'd go ahead and you got no mitzvah whatsoever, you have to go ahead and make a new Shachiano. According to the Bavli, he clears, which we'll get in, is there any Kiyam HaMitzvah, or did you get the mitzvah? And then that would relate to the question of Shachiano, which we're going to get into. We'll continue this next week on this, but this is the famous quiz that with Rav Tzvi Pesach Frank brings down, happened about, 150, 200 years ago. Rav Schlesinger, I think his name was. He was basically, he basically learned the Gemara, the Rif Shita, that had nothing to do with the Mikdash. It's not limited. You had a Beis Habad, you have a Beis Din in the old city of Yerushalayim. And there was a whole big tumult with that year. I'm not sure if he actually ended up blowing or not. He did, okay. So everyone knew. He made an announcement, come to my shul. They had all this, I guess all those signs up, the posters in Hebrew. Instead of putting people in Chayrim, they had the signs about... I heard most people didn't, he did it anyway, you mean, but right.
There have been signs up to put Hebrew care about
right. Actually, right. But, so he put the signs up, if you want to hear a shofar blowing on Shabbos, so he felt based on the Rif sheet, the question was, should one go ahead? So obviously Chazal said you can't blow the shofar. They said Gzeir D'Rabba. The question is, I'm not going to blow the shofar. Is there any injury for me to go and try to hear the shofar blowing? Kind of like the question you asked me before. The Mikdash, obviously it's a strong one in the Mikdash, but Mikdash, are you token? Do I have a chiyuv to try to get to the Mikdash? A similar question. Even if you're held not to do it, but you're not doing it, the Gzeira D'Rabba was violated already. But is it maybe only on the Tokeya, that's who we're knassing, but the Shmi, I'm not doing anything wrong. So that was the big tumult about 150 years ago or so. And therefore the question was, should one try to go ahead and try to hear the shofar? So that's it. But along those lines, it's the Rav Shlomo Kluger, he asked, the question was, this person, again, let's assume the Sephardi or non-Sephardi even the Ashkenaz for this question is, a guy he made the brachas, he started blowing, let's assume Minat Torah you need 9 shofar blasts, and we know 9:30, whichever number we want to use, but let's say he started blowing, but he's only up to 6 now, and then he remembers, wait a second, it's Shabbos, what am I doing here? So the shaila is, should he keep on going on that? Because do I say I already violated the Gzeira D'Rabba, so now should I try to get, if I only blow 6 tkiyas, I definitely don't have a mitzvah. So the question is, should I go ahead now and finish whatever, but we say 9:30, whatever we want to discuss, whatever the minimum amount is to get to that's where Rav Shlomo Kluger raised in terms of...
I was going to ask you that on the other question, according to the Talmud Bavli, according to the Shechiano thing, according to the Talmud Bavli, so for sure you would not need the Shechianu you said on the first day, you were Yotze Mitzvah. Is that certainly the case? Or do you say that the Shei Baltasa means that you don't have a mitzvah, there's no mitzvah to do?
That's what we're going to get into next week. That's the Rabbi Kiva Eger. So let's just summarize, and we'll continue next week. So the Mishnah said, "But Mikdash are you token of a low Medina? Why not in the Medina?" So according to the Bavli, Gzeira D'Rabba. According to the Yerushalmi, Yom Shua versus Zichron Shua, and the Shibboleth Leket wants to go somewhere in between. We keep Yom Shua and Zichron Shua. It's a din daraisa, so we make a Gzeira. And then we had, according to the Bavli, all with the power of Chachamim will susser. That's what Rav Chanan learned. That's what it's referring to when the Torah says Boshov, the Chachamim say not to. Left is right, right is left. The issue of why don't we say Gzeira D'Rabba by Mila if we say it, because that's Mefurish Bakra, and that's the issue why Shema Yisak and Klishir we couldn't make that Gzeira, because then you'll be uprooting the mitzvah of Shovu Agamre. But She'ein Kain, even if it's only one day, but if Rosh HaShana falls on Shabbos, it's only 1 year. That's what the Rambam writes in Hilchos Mamrim. Sometimes you have to give up your mitzvah for the big picture. It's going to be Gorim Chilul Shabbos. We have Ma'inaf Kamina between the Yerushalmi and Bavli. So whether it is or not, who knows, but there's some throw out whether if you mix up Zikron Shua and Yom Shua, we'd have to go back and repeat the Shemona Esrei. Definitely not according to the Bavli, maybe not even according to Yerushalmi. As I pointed, even though it's ironic, we do make that chiluk in davening like the Yerushalmi, implying that the Gemara doesn't totally reject what the Yerushalmi is saying. And then the issue of a svardim of Shechianu, if you blew shofar in Shos, again assuming there was a Kiyam HaMitzvah. And similarly over here, let's say you started doing the Tekiyas, again, should you go ahead? If it's Zichron Trua, then what's the difference? But according to the Bavli, there's a mitzvah. That's what we'll continue next week. We'll discuss the question of Rabbi Kiva Eger, what's the pshat? In other words, when the Chachamim say no shofar today, does that mean the mitzvah of shofar no longer exists? Well, no, they can't. They don't have that much power. They can't uproot a mitzvah of gamre. They can tell me I don't have a mitzvah of shofar. But the mitzvah of shofar, that's what we'll get into that question, and we'll continue on more questions of Rosh HaShana, Shachol, Shabbos.